Is Sue with you?
One time we had a bunch of firefighters in here, and I was like, okay, for you guys, please keep them on. Also, if you have any cards, there's a trash can where you guys got your refreshments, you can also bring it up to the counter, and I'll take care of it for you there. The books are also all available at the counter, so when the talk's over and these gentlemen are ready to sign, they're going to be in the middle of the store. So the trick is everyone wants to tell them, great job, congratulations, you're awesome, but they have to go over here. So we solved this problem by having the counter in the middle, and that's where you'll buy all the books. So we figured that one out. Now that all the boring stuff is done, my name is Rosie. I'm a co-owner here at Avery Books, and we're just really happy to see everybody out and about supporting authors. I really appreciate how much Sonoma can draw together people who appreciate storytelling, and I really do like that. Now, what I like about the combination of these two books that were many books, but these two authors, three authors in there, it's a very, very complex web going on here, is that there are many ways to spread information. The boring ways where you read it in the Times, there are the really boring ways where you read it in an academic paper, and then there are the very stupid ways where you see a video on TikTok. And the better way to spread information, in my opinion, is not just books, but novels, because it engages people and it makes people think about the political situation of the world. It makes people think about all of these things, also giving them good entertainment. And that's what these people have really created. It's a way of telling stories that brings us information, entertainment, and all of the good things. So Bruce, aka Avery Mann, is going to start off, and then Ron and Sarah will come together to do that. There we go. Thank you guys so much.
First, my thanks to Rosie Parks, who recently was acclaimed by the California Independent Booksellers Alliance. And is the treasured heart of the literary scene here in Sonoma's heart. Did you all know that she was married right here in Reader's Books? This is part of her life. And it's an amazing thing. My thanks also go to Ron and Sarah Lovett, who are such luminaries that I feel like the opening act for them. So, I wrote a novel last year that won a literary award, Mr. Gobscheit, and I want to tell you a little bit about it. But it's written under my pen name, Avery Mann, a name chosen because I'd like to think I write for every man. You know, when I was setting out to find publishing, everybody wanted bodice women's stories and all that sort of thing. And I said, well, I'm a man. I write men's stories. Well, they mostly weren't very interested in that. But I said, I write for every man. So it became a natural, and I became Avery Mann. We were living in Tiburon, and people in Tiburon just knew me as Avery Mann, and people just forgotten it. Anyway, I wrote a novel last year that won an award called Mr. Gobscheit, written under my pen name. And there's a few things I want to share with you. I'm not going to do a lengthy reading, but I want to tell you about the book and about the series, and then I'll do a brief reading. And if I take too long, Ron will nudge me, and if I don't take too long, we'll go more. Gobscheit is the first of three novels. It's written in Dublin, Ireland, where we're going back next month. And it features a very savvy, self-promoting Irish civil servant who was targeted by Russian, NATO, and American spies. The book's protagonist, a retired Navy captain with a background similar to my own in international law and diplomacy, is called upon to pull Ireland into NATO's formal defense architecture to better secure the undersea communication cables and keep the American economy running and keep NATO connected. Through a series of manipulations and coincidences, Gobscheit manages to befriend Putin and becomes a celebrity golfing buddy of Trump, who develops his own plans for him. Abner Muskrat also gets featured. He bears a remarkable resemblance to Elon Musk. In the second novel, Gobscheit resurfaces doing deals around the world for rare earth minerals and makes a fortune selling rights to what isn't actually there. This includes his fortune allows him to buy U.S. citizenship for himself and his wife, and he becomes a major contributor to Trump's second campaign. In the third novel, Mr. Gobscheit is appointed the U.S. National Security Advisor, charged with getting Trump green. I won't say more other than the White House should follow Gobscheit's strategies if it's serious about wanting agreement. Beneath a good deal of fun, which I put in Mr. Gobscheit, I wanted it to be a fun read with a lot of humor and witty things, especially playing golf with Trump in Ireland. My protagonist, Mark Jamison, is there to get Ireland into NATO so these undersea communication cables would be better protected. And Trump hates NATO and doesn't want Ireland to get into NATO. So you can see the layers of tension that are evolving. But beneath it is a very serious story so rooted in technical and political reality that it functions as a strategic warning. You know, this is serious stuff. And how do you get an audience with serious stuff? You have to make it fun. It's a warning about what? That the evolution of undersea communication cables has become a dangerously overly perilous situation. Once a unique cable was laid down in 1865 to connect America to Europe by telegraph. Today, roughly 95% of all global financial transactions, internet and telephone traffic, including encrypted military communications, pass through a series of these interconnected fiber optic tubes that circle the globe. Out of sight, resting on the seabed, they are unprotected and largely out of mind. So, how did we come to know about this? Well, we stay in a place called Port Mahon on Valencia Island, far, far west of Ireland, a place that's very cold and very dreary. And this becomes the setting for a lot of the activity that goes on here with the Russian trawler, American submarines, etc., etc. Two important truths are laid bare in this book, both of which are hidden from day-to-day knowledge, not covered in the press, but the book brings this to the surface. The first is we don't adequately safeguard the cables because we spy on the communications that pass through them. There's a submarine called the USS Jimmy Carter. Its sole role is to hover over these cables and monitor the traffic that passes through them. So we don't want to safeguard these things. We don't want them broken. We want them to function, and we want to monitor the traffic that's going through. The problem is the Russians are doing the same thing now, and the Chinese are doing the same thing now. But we still think of the good old days when we were the only ones monitoring the cables. The second truth is interesting, and I wanted to bring it up because, again, people are unaware of it. The ownership ownership of the undersea communication cables has shifted dramatically over the last decade. Historically, these cables were owned by consortia of national telecom companies like AT&T, France Telecom, etc. No longer. Today, the landscape is dominated by companies like Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, which now own or lease nearly 95% of the transatlantic and trans-Pacific data capacity. And we might suppose Abner Muskrat doesn't just want Starlink. Amazon makes more money through the flow of information in its cable system than it does with the actual sale of the products. It owns the flow of information around the world. It's an incredibly lucrative business. They control the international communication flow. It isn't just Amazon sales we're talking about. It's all of the phone conversations, internet traffic. The government has to lease space on these things. It's not protecting them because it wants to monitor them, because there's a communication that's of interest, but it's making a fortune for the companies that own these things. In my experience, working across diplomacy, international law, and strategic advisory roles, the most consequential forces in global stability are often not visible at all. It's not what you think it is. I watch the news and it's like a sideshow. What's really going on are the systems, legal frameworks, communication infrastructure, financial networks, institutional relationships that operate continuously beneath political cycles. That's where the real positive and negative flows exist. It's within these systems that real power is exercised, constrained, and sometimes quietly contested. Much of this never appears in public discourse, as I said. This is among the reasons why I wrote Mr. Gobscheit, and I hope you'll find it to be enjoyable reading that's also informative. And I'll read just a little bit, and if I'm not taking enough time, Ron will encourage me to take more time. But I think Sarah's available, so they'll get going shortly. The drive across Ireland in the middle of a red alert storm was about as frightening as it was slow going. The worst wasn't the detours or even the huge puddles where Mark was sure the car was going to stall out and they would need to walk in the downpour. Blessings on this Uber driver who pushed on in spite of it all. Maybe it was his nerves or just Irish gregariousness on steroids, but the man wouldn't shut up. Mark had to feign sleeping, but when the car jumped coming out of a deep puddle, the driver knew Mark was faking and continued on the drive. On the drive, Jamison recalled Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, issuing a stark warning a few months earlier. The undersea cables that enable global communications has become a legitimate target for Russia, he had said. Medvedev's warning came after Nord Stream 2, a pipeline that transfers gas from Russia to Germany, was blown up. Russian officials believed that the West had been involved in the attack. Medvedev said if we proceed from the proven complicity of Western countries in blowing up the Nord Streams, then we have no constraints, even moral, left to prevent us from destroying the ocean floor cable communications of our enemies. Medvedev had this posted on Telegram. It was pretty clear why Mark was summoned to help. Mark knew all about the bombings of the Nord Stream pipelines, which is covered in one of the books, and what really was involved. It was hard keeping silent about it, and so much else. Someday he would disclose a great deal, writing in novels that disguise reality as fiction. Hopefully some readers would notice. Mark nodded off and fell into a deep sleep. So that's my brief but brilliant presentation.
I'm going to try to get Sarah on here. Let's see.
She's having.
Sarah, are you there?
Yes, I'm.
Yeah, I can hear you now. You want to turn your camera on? I don't know. Maybe, but can you see it? So, it's so hard to get good help, you know? You could. The mic, I think, I'm not sure what the mic is doing.
So. Access to the dogs. Sorry, folks.
Trying to get you highlighted, so.
That's funny, for some reason the options are different than what I encountered in my app. Maybe we can just hide
Okay, just hide.
self here.
There we go.
There we go.
Beautiful. All right, we're gonna try and, I'm not sure how much cable we have.
Do you want?
See somebody. All right. Can we see that? Yeah. Okay, we're good. All right. So, she's not, no, that's about what we're gonna get. Yeah, sabotage. So, thank you, Sarah. Do you want to give the introduction or shall I? You go ahead, Rob. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So, we're reading from our book, Metal Viper, which is inspired by a true story. It's inspired, let me rephrase that, it's inspired by a real organization. And it is a totally fictional account. And, but the woman who inspired this, and the organization that inspired this, is really quite extraordinary. And I wanted to say a few words about her. Karen Che, and we have, wait, first let me ask, is there anyone here from the Myanmar government? That's what they say if they were. That's true. We have to be careful because one of International Bridges to Justice Minister of Finance was arrested for making a contribution to the wrong person and thrown in jail in Myanmar for 10 years. So she, the organization International Bridges to Justice, I'm going to repeat that a couple times, IBJ.org. All they've done is end torture as an investigative tool in 12 countries, and now 11 because Myanmar has fallen back, but 11 countries, and they're working in over 50 others. This woman is doing extraordinary work. We call her a warrior goddess. She's barely 5 foot tall, and yet she goes into these organizations. She goes into these leaders. I mean, she's dealing with the leaders of countries, and she kind of grabs them by the collar and says, "You signed an agreement with the UN to not torture. You need to uphold that agreement." And she gets them to agree to her process, which is what she does, is she goes in and trains public defenders in these countries, in these different places, so that when somebody is arrested, they call their organization Their organization sends out a public defender to protect them, and they're called justice makers, to protect their prisoners, and it works. And it's worked to end torture as an investigative tool in 11 countries. And it mostly worked in Myanmar till there was the coup in 2022. So I decided that she was a great character for a thriller, a series of thrillers. And I'd known Karen for a while. And so I called up Sarah, who I've also known for a while. Sarah and I had written a whole series of books for a company called John Muir Publications. Sarah more than I. And Sarah had written a whole slew of incredibly acclaimed thrillers, the Dr. Sylvia Strange books, which are now available, which is one of them at least is available now, again, has been reissued, and the rest to follow. And I said, Sarah, do you, she works with lots of authors. I said, do you know somebody, a woman who would like to write this with me? Because I feel I need to have a woman to do this for the counties and offices. And Sarah, without even a blink of the eye, raised her hand and said, I do. Now, over the years, Sarah and I have worked on a lot of different collaborative efforts. This is far and away the best one I've worked in, and I think Sarah will tell you that it's pretty damn close for her as well. We have so much fun with our story conferencing and whatnot that people who are listening are a little afraid that we're really not getting any work done, but we are. And it was really good. I'm very proud of this Metal Viper book, and I think when you hear from Sarah, you'll agree that it's really something. Getting this out, as Avery was saying, is absolutely important. So Sarah, did you hear any of that? Okay.
Is her mic on?
Her mic is on.
Is this mic?
This mic is on. Unfortunately, you're just gonna have to listen. Okay, so Sarah, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Oh,
You are. You're talking right now.
the maestro here tonight conducting. This is a first experiment at a where you'll see Anon are trying to into Myanmar, and they are driven by conflict from survivors. Traveling across the land through the jungle, and they have their experience in Myanmar, so I'll pick up in a minute. And can you hear me?
Yes, as well as possible, I think.
Chocolate broke and they saw why. Three men had stepped out of the jungle and into the middle of the road. Two were barely in their 20s. The third was 10 years older. They held machetes, but no firearms were useful. Their simple clothes were torn and their bodies were bruised and bleeding. They stared at the car with empty eyes. Villagers, something said, his body was with a king. He inched the window down, even as his right hand extended toward the floor. And he thought she saw the butt of a pistol. One of the men elders spoke tersely in an unfamiliar dialect. Clearly he was asking a question. After too long, silence. Tambo spoke in the same dialect and tried to reply. Without understanding the words, it was clear he was responding in the negative. They are asking if you're following the picture, he said sharply under his breath. And insane. After eternity, the men lowered their weapons. They then attacked children, destroyed precious lives, quietly, gently, before anyone, almost everyone, died. His tone as he spoke the larger words he was saying, but his eyes felt within their women and children. Military forces came through with shoulder rockets and fire tanks, and they torched everything they didn't kill. Kay heard Anand's quiet prayer as he reacted to the news. She joined his prayer silently. Then she started as someone else stepped from the window on her side of the car, an elderly woman, and then another younger woman, and a child, a girl. Kay thought about her own boy, and she thought of the defect of his father lost to an insane prison. A wire of trucks ran out too close, then the blast of a heavier weapon. The men were talking urgently, ordering the women off the road for a car, running for a fast later. Unlock the door, they said. We must move, they said. Kay waited, and Champo did as he was told. She opened her door and stepped out. The elderly woman said to her companions with the body, to Kay she was 1,000 years old, and yet she had the courage of 100 warriors. Kay reached out, offering her hand, tension, breathing, as the gunfire grew louder. Kay, Mom called out to her, we have to go. Kay ignored him. She saw into Champo's face too. He stayed still, and the warrior woman supported him. They stood that way for most of the minute, even as he gave his invitation. Kay leaned forward and waited with shoes. The creases on her face smeared with sweat and dirt, and yet, her beauty radiated to Kay. Until they stood together, touching foreheads. After a long moment, Kay and his woman recrossed from each other, so Kay could see the younger woman and the girl too. Her eyes never leaving them, she called out, what do you have, food? Water? He heard the uncertain creak in the dense air. Before the journey is over, we must be in hard hard. The Champa opened the documentation and Anand gathered up the provisions, holding them out open. Use my shawl to wrap them, Kay ordered quietly. As she did, the child stepped out from behind the younger woman, hunger gleamed in her eyes. Only then he saved Kay from the woman. She took the bundle from Anand and held it out to the eldest woman, who accepted it, but first gave a slight water, hands together at her heart. When her own hands were free, Kay reached out suddenly and touched the cheek of the younger woman, and then she kissed the top of the child's head. She pressed her palms together, murmuring prayers. An explosion sounded, perhaps only kilometers from where they had stopped. We must go now, Champa said, urgently, leaping into place. Hurry, that was all Anand said. As Kay slipped into the front seat, the eldest woman and those under the wings slipped back into the jungle and disappeared. As soon as Kay's door was shut, Champa roared to accelerate, and the car bounced and flew forward. The parties moved to the west of us, so we should make it. As naked as we could lie, as flat as hell, Champa's room was it, and I agreed. Isn't that what John Wayne says in the old movie? Nice rumor, Kay thought, catching Anand's eye as they hit a butt, and her head almost smacked the ceiling.
Thank you, sir. So, I'm going to read a section that actually predates that just a bit, which was when Kay and Anand showed up in Thailand prior to crossing over into Myanmar. And you know what I need? I need my bag because I need my glasses. Excuse me. Peggy, you've got my bag?
I think so.
Don't get up. This is new for me. I just had my eyes done in January, and I could read without a problem, and I couldn't see in the distance. Now I can see in the distance. I can't read it. Okay, here we go. As they passed through the open doorway with its requisite chipped cerulean blue paint, they entered a lush but unkept courtyard, overgrown and understated. It looked as if it hadn't been tended for as long as Singha beer had been unavailable. There was a large Thai spirit house rising out of the vines that edged the garden. Well, Kate thought, at least the gods and goddesses are happy. The garden courtyard encircled a small patch of grass around which the 7 guest house was strung. Yep, definitely Reinhardt's kind of place, Kate repeated, smiling because it was and because she knew the man. They found the room number 4, the numeral having been painted onto the door after the original molded letter had fallen off a long time ago, judging from the general condition of the guest house. Before they could knock on the door, Reinhardt opened it. And without missing a beat, he said, I've made a few calls and some arrangements. He stepped out into the garden and gently moving Kay and Anand away from his room and quickly closing the door behind him. He then motioned them back toward the bar in front. Kay smiled as she gripped his arm, stopping him in his tracks. She didn't speak until he met her brown eyes with his bloodshot blues. Hello, Reinhardt. You've always bring me to the nicest places. For just a moment, he said nothing, a clouded thought passing across his features. But then he shook his head, actually shook away from whatever had been there, however briefly. He grinned. I never promised you anything more than Shangri-La, Toots. I hope you don't mind that I started happy hour a little earlier. Kay cringed as he spoke the nickname he had given her when she had come to him as a 21-year-old shadow in society researcher at Yale. Synchronicity, their paths crossing again. Even then, the name was inappropriate, and she hated it. She hated it now, but it was Reinhardt Allen, and though she shared it with no one, she admitted to herself that she found it endearing. He was endearing in his own crusty way. It was clear to anyone who saw them together that she loved and respected this rather wild man who had always seemed closer to the age of Methuselah than to her, although he might have been 50, 60, or something else younger than 100. He leaned in and gave her a kiss on the cheek. It's good to see you. How are the kids and the old man? Reinhardt, she shook her head, eyeing him closely. Disheveled was a given for Reinhardt, but today she saw a weariness and something else she couldn't identify. We both know you don't give a damn about them. True, but give me a break here. I'm trying to civilize my actors. He turned to eye Anand. Good to see you too, Gobscheit. Please, call me Anand. Glad you two could make it to this nice little slice of paradise, Reinhardt said, already walking. When they made it out to the bar, Reinhardt took a seat at a red-top card table near the back corner. It sat under the overhang that fronted the bar, and it was obviously his table. Like those who frequent dangerous places, he sat with his back to the wall in a chair facing the room and the road. The sun was low on the horizon, and the small globes of the string of lights that ran back and forth across the outside of the tables were twinkling to life. The early night creatures began their call and response chorale as a little girl, no more than 8, placed 3 cans of real beer with its distinctive leopard label onto the table. Thanks, Cherry, Reinhardt said, and then in perfect Thai, he spoke again to the little girl who smiled and ran off returning with a dark-eyed, dark-haired woman in tow. Let me introduce our host, Lamai, who is also Cherry's mother. She makes a great tomcat if either of you are hungry. Kay gave a short way, hands together at her heart, and then Angela bowed to Lamai, thanking her and declining. Lamai gently reined in Cherry, who wanted to visit with Reinhardt, for whom she couldn't do enough. Sweet kid, he said, already moving on. Cheers, he raised his can of Leo. Welcome to the outskirts of Top. You know you've made it in this life when Top is the top of the world. He took a deep drink of the beer and then set it on the table. So, now I'll read a section that takes place a little later. And I will warn you, I've never been able to get through this section without crying. Bear with me. So what this is that the boy Vika, who is the son of the poet Baker who has been arrested, has broken out of the room that Kay and Anand had found for him while they were getting ready to leave. And he has gone off and to discover a group of poets that were friends of his father's. And while he has been traversing this, he is found by one of the poets. Nyan guided him along a path crowded with blossoms and a fragrance Vika recognized immediately as night blooming jasmine. The simple wooden house behind the bushes looked dark. Nyan opened the door and slipped off his shoes, which he placed among the pile of other shoes to the left of the door. As Vika removed his, he tried to count the number already on the bare wooden floor, but he was quickly guided into a back room lit by the warm yellow glow of candles. Even in the dim light, he recognized many faces among the 6 others in the room, men who were among his father's closest friends. He bowed to his elders and heard their labor greeting. There was one face he didn't recognize, a younger man sitting in a corner against a bare wall, holding an electronic tablet, the glow lighting his face. Vika then saw his father's closest friend, San Chi, rise and come toward him. Uncharacteristically, he gave Vika a big hug. We are so pleased to see you, Vika, and so glad you could join us. Please come sit next to me. Your father's dear friend, Salaya Jha, is just about to read. Oh yes, I should tell you we have another guest tonight. Han Het Hong. He is the journalist for a newspaper in England, The Guardian. He knew your father and he asked if he could join us. The journalist said nothing but nodded toward Vika, who bowed. Then Salaya Jha, a gray-haired survivor, leaning on a chair for support, and read his poem in a voice just above a whisper.
Oh, wow.
Foul fragrance of hatred rises out of the pockmarked streets that once echoed the laughter of children. No more, their posters tell us. No more. There are no longer children, only fighters for freedom. The shame of silence, the wretched carcass of cowardice. There was no reaction from the gathered poets, only heads nodding and the feelings unleashed. When Salaya Jha had retaken the seat, Sanchi whispered, "Who's next?" The bare room was silent for a moment, decorated only by the flicker of candlelight. I have a poem, Vika said, rising to face his father's friends. I composed it and memorized it while I was insane. I wrote it down tonight. He took the poem out of the back pocket of his jeans and unfolded it. He read the poem very slowly, speaking each word as if it were a song, just as his father had taught him. His eyes never left the piece of paper on which he had written his poem. He knew he couldn't make eye contact with those in the room. He just knew he couldn't. My father taught me to see the world, the different shades of green, the blue of the sky, the bright orange of the marigold, the right texture of dough before it's ready to be bread, the granules of sugar caramelizing and hardening into shiny blades, the handprint of flour left on my shoulder when I had made it just right. He taught me to see kindness, how those without shared what little they had, to bring caring everywhere, to smile, the smile from the cookie, the hug of warm gnawing. My father taught me the way words went together mattered, how fewer words became generous, opening others to see, to touch their hearts, how a poem could change the world, how mixing together a few words could make something no one expected, how I love you was bigger than hate. I love my father. He showed me the gentleness of tiger, the flight of bird above it all, the sweet taste he left us. As Victor folded the poem and stuffed it back into his jeans, She came up and hugged him again. Your father is so proud, the old poet said in Burmese. Vika listened deferentially to his elder. He admired all the poets, these allies of his father, more than he could express. We will reach out in our usual way for our next gathering. Each of us should take care as we leave, Sanchi quietly told the group. Stay to the shadows. That was when they all heard it. Just outside, the unmistakable sound of boots on the ground. Salaya grabbed Vika's hand, and then the journalist pulling them both into the back of the house. Just as the front door was breached, the shattering of the door was followed by the shouts of men, the heavy steps of more boots. Thank you. So, Sarah, you still there? Good. Okay. So what we would love to do is, if you guys have any questions for Avery, for Sarah, or myself, we'd love to do the best we can in answering them. So, anyone? Yes, ma'am.
This is more of a comment on this, that the first poem that you read by the older poet, it just felt like it applies to here now.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. You know, there are so many parallels in here, but we are not really pointing to anything. And one of the comments that we had in some of the reviews that we got was that we didn't do that. We made certain that we weren't pointing from there to here, which is very easy to do. Thank you. Any other comments? Yes? No, I live in Eugene, Oregon, and Sarah is in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Yes, well, we came here for you. Who else? Yes, sir.
So Ron, talk a little bit about how you guys collaborated and shared the work to create a novel together.
Sarah, you want to talk a little bit about that? Did you hear the question?
Yeah, I did. I think that, yes, I think we're very good. Very easily, again, because we've known each other, and Ron is, like, he's a brother to me. And so we have a shared history and camaraderie, and both have a sense of humor. So, that was very helpful for us, and we did have the knowledge to take place. There were a few times we were working together in person, and otherwise it was like this, right, with Zoom, each of us talking. And Ron says that, but I'll say that, we effortlessly go through, we structured, have an idea of structure, and the pictures going, and scenes would come up, and, you know, and Ron, like the column, Ron would say, I'll take this, and, you know, for me, I would say, oh, I want to do this one, and then one over here, and then we get together, we both read, and talk about the revise and how we would revise, and I will say that I I've written a lot of very good stories, what I would take back, that was a fun scene for me, but I also know that it's best to have your play it under some situation, but have them be, like those 3 parts around, right? So, yeah, so we just sort of get back and forth, also with our energy, when we were tired, when we had our work, we did other things, and Ron and everything, we both know what he did, so, yeah, it's very, very fun.
It was a lot of fun, and that's one of the keys to it, was that we both laugh a lot and enjoy each other. And even more important, we respected each other. And Sarah is a brilliant writer and has produced some extraordinary books. And so it's a real sharing process that we have together. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, I get yelled at by my wife that we're having too much fun, and not running the book.
Avery's comments with textualizing the story that he was spinning were really helpful, and not a lot of people in the West know an awful lot about Myanmar or about why it would be the center of a yarn like this being spun. And I wonder if you could sort of comment and contextualize as to like what's the second setting.
I'll do the best I can. Myanmar is an incredibly dangerous place, and it became so after the coup. They were talking about the prison, we were talking about the prison insane, an insane prison. That's how it's spelled. INSEIN. It is insane, and it is probably the most dangerous prison on earth right now. And so, because of my relationship with Karen, who was the inspiration for this, I knew that her story we needed to get this story out, and so that's what we did.
Some of it.
Okay,
I mean,
but I'm ignoring the rest of it.
well, the coup's been going on for a while,
4 years.
and there's also been, one of the most horrendous genocides of our age.
Yes.
Gets very little coverage, and it's sort of misunderstood. And there's, a British woman, Nobel Peace Prize winner, somewhere in the mix.
Yeah.
And it's
Karen asked us not include her, because she turned out to be a bit of a, I don't know if you guys know the definition of a Hollywood friend. It's somebody who stabs you in the front. And, so she was a bit of a Hollywood friend. And so they didn't want to include her, so we really took her out of the book. But the point is, and as you find throughout the book, is the context that you're asking about is kind of laying into this. And because you learn, you get a different view from the people who are involved in it than you read from the news. And one of my favorite comments in the review that we received was, these people were obviously in the army. But you punch people out.
Yeah.
And so it's just, go ahead.
To respond to that, in Mr. Gobscheit, I wrote about actual experiences in Ireland, and I had the opposite comment. Because we understood this guy obviously has never been there, doesn't always talk that way. And it was totally accurate, and it was just mind-boggling. The point is, you don't know what in the heck the reader's going to come up with.
That's right.
It's you can give as much information and write in as much of a literary style as is appropriate, and people still, some get it, some don't, and you just have to try to say it. Sarah, it's nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you.
Well, we'll correct that later. Who else? Who else? I guess you didn't say it. Go ahead.
For Avery, it seems like I have read something about these underground cables somewhere, and I'm not so.
Is it diplomat?
In the what?
Diplomat.
What is that?
Netflix series.
Okay, but I feel like I've read over or something. I'm just wondering, aside from your books, you know about, oh, the diplomat, I remember that. Yes, I saw that too. But anyway, I feel like.
Mine was first.
Yes. It was, yes.
And that matters, damn it.
Yeah. And you don't know.
And there has since been a number of these, but in the news,
There is a lot of issues with regard to cables because the Russians are actively trying to snag them, and they drag anchors and they do a bunch of different things. People are arrested. But the thing that we want to keep in mind is this: the United States does not belong to the UN Convention on Law of the Sea. It needs to be. Everybody in the armed forces wants it to be. And the reason we're not in the Convention on the Law of the Sea is because the CIA doesn't want to be involved with this thing. They do not want any constraints on their freedom of operation overseas. The problem is that thinking is very antiquated because the Russians and the Chinese are doing exactly the same thing. And we need to be party to the Law of the Sea Convention, which nearly every other maritime power is a member of. So we have put ourselves out of the role of a participant in the maritime environment at a critical time. And these undersea cables go through, by the way, the Strait of Hormuz, they go through the Red Sea, they go through, et cetera, et cetera. Baltic Sea is a number of issues.
And with the step companies that are American, right, own the vast majority of what's going on.
The corporate world.
Yeah.
World, underline.
Yeah, anyway, thank you.
Yeah, there's questions for Bruce. It felt like a lot of the information you were talking about this evening gave me the sense that there may have been a lot of information in your book that's perhaps disclassified or is classified. Is there any part of that that had to be declassified, or was that an issue, or is it just all fantasy?
No. In fact, I have some books that deal with the far west of China, which is Xinjiang, and what was going on with the leaders with regard to American and British spies that were stirring up the mess in Xinjiang, which is why there's re-education camps going on. Well, people don't know why there's re-education camps, and they don't know why things were stirred up. But I had a meeting scheduled with the president of China that was canceled because of the 500-pound bomb that the Uyghur separatists planted, quite willing to kill the president of China. But who was responsible for it? You have no idea how nefarious the international intelligence community is. These are like kids playing in a sandbox with no concern for the long-term consequences of what they're doing. They don't know about blowback, they don't know about the long-term picture. They come to work every morning with the instructions to screw the other side. How do we screw the other side? Let's sit down and have conferences and discuss ways we can hurt the other side.
Was it classified, or did you sit down and find this?
I chose a pen name for a good reason. And I am very careful not to go over the line. So for example, I will tell you right now that the United States Navy blew up the Nord Stream pipelines. That's still technically classified, but it's been revealed by a number of sources, and I can essentially add my 2 cents to that. Well, because of that, you got the Russian response. We feel that we have a moral right to blow up undersea cables. Now, the Russians and the Chinese don't rely on undersea cables because they're landmass. These are land nations, and they communicate largely over land-based lines. But we are not. We have, everything that we do goes through either the Pacific or the Atlantic or the Caribbean.
Wow.
So for us to mess with other people's underwater activities is very short-sighted.
Wow. So any other, I think that we've kind of reached our limit. Yes, just one last question.
You say you haven't been in Myanmar, you weren't there when this was, but you must have some connection.
Yeah, we have a lot of tremendous consultants, people who have spent a lot of time on the ground there, who really made sure that the story we were telling was correct. And not just IBJ, but there's a quote from Richard Rioch on the back of the book, and Richard was a very important consultant for us. Richard was the chief marketing officer for Amnesty International, and spent a lot of time in that area in both Bangladesh with the Rohingya issue and so we were able to do that. And they really, made sure that what we were telling was the truth, and what we were describing was real. Okay. Well, now you get to go buy the book and books. And Richard, I think if you give Sarah a hand for her.